definition of not being successful is being, miserable in whatever you're doing every day. I had written a business plan for a music store. I always wanted to kind of start my own business. I started Capital Music Gear almost 6 years ago now. We're an online retailer that sells music gear. We sell on our own website as well as other marketplaces like Amazon, eBay, places like that. I actually kind of started it part-time while I was still working there, just to kind of see, if it had any legs, if it could take off. We don't have any other jobs outside of this. So if we don't do a good job with it, we're not going to be able to sustain our livelihood. But music's always been a big passion, and yeah, I mean, it just makes it so much easier. Like when things suck and you're really kind of in the trenches with stuff, to be dealing with stuff that you love overall. I think success is just being passionate about something and putting your all into it.
Hey everybody, welcome to another edition of Step into Success podcast. Today, our guest is coming from Madison, Wisconsin, Corey, owner of Capital Music Gear. And Corey, thanks a lot for being on the show. Excited for the conversation. Going to give you a second just to introduce yourself and tell us, who you are and what it is you do.
Yeah, thanks a lot for having me. I started Capital Music Gear almost 6 years ago now. We're an online retailer that sells music gear. We sell on our own website as well as other marketplaces like Amazon, eBay, places like that. So, and it's kind of an interesting business model, which we'll get into. But yeah, it's been fun. It's been great.
Awesome, thank you. So, Corey, look, I'm always curious about entrepreneurs and how they got started. Have you kind of always wanted to be in business for yourself, or have you had other businesses in the past? How did you become an entrepreneur, and how did you get to where you are now? What was the foundation for that?
Yeah, so back when I was in college, I graduated 2008, so it was a little while ago. But I had written a business plan for a music store. I always wanted to kind of start my own business, but it never really made sense to start a brick and mortar store like around the Madison area. There was too much saturation. It was too much of an investment, not a great return on investment kind of thing. So I never really pulled the trigger on it, but it was something that was always, in the back of my mind as a desire. And then I ended up working for an e-commerce company, headquartered in Madison, not in the music industry, in a different industry, but e-commerce only. And it was a pretty flat organization. So I got a chance to kind of see from the top down, how the whole business runs and everything like that. And then, yeah, I just was able to pull the trigger at some point on my own business. I actually kind of started it part-time while I was still working there, just to kind of see, if it had any legs, if it could take off. And it did great. So, yeah.
And at what point did you determine that it did have legs and that you could take it from just being part-time kind of on the side to then going full-time into this?
Yeah. So by the time I took it full-time, it was already generating a decent amount of revenue, almost enough for us to just live on, just as it was, with me just doing it part-time on the side. So it wasn't really much of a risk, of a jump for us to go into business. We were in a comfortable financial position too. So there wasn't, I feel kind of, bad for some entrepreneurs that really have to make that all in jump. Like for us, it was, it was a pretty easy little step that was already rolling pretty well. So.
Got it. And something I want to go back to real quick is you just said in 2008 is when you graduated, and that's when you had written the business plan about an e-commerce business. So I know that e-commerce really blew up here recently when COVID broke out and everything, right? But you were obviously way ahead. What was it that made you realize e-commerce was the route for you back as early as 2008?
Yeah, so 2008, that was the business plan for the physical music store, where I was like, oh yeah, I want to have a music store where people are going to cut. So it wasn't as much of an e-commerce. Like that was still part of the business plan, but it definitely wasn't the main part. But it wasn't until I was working for this other company in Madison that was an online only company. That's when I really got to see that business model and how efficient it was and some of the best practices that they were using. I was thinking, oh, I can implement this in the music industry, where I really wasn't seeing anybody do those type of things in this industry, and it was the industry that I loved. So
what was it specifically that you learned that made you realize you wanted to do e-commerce rather than an actual brick and mortar store? Because I feel like a lot of people, dealing with supply chain, dealing with suppliers and all that can be kind of confusing. So what made you want to do all e-commerce?
Yeah, working at that other e-commerce company, I really did get to see the whole business model. I mean, from the top down, from the owner, what he did to all the exec, I reported right to him by the end of the time I was leaving. So I really knew what every department was working on, what some of the best practices from a technology standpoint were. And I knew that those were things that weren't being done in the music industry. So for me to be able to kind of see the inner workings of an e-commerce business model and be able to implement that in the music industry was perfect because most of it's been drop shipping, right? So we'll order something, let's say a customer orders on our website, they'll order something, then we'll send that address to the supplier, say ship this item to this customer, kind of a thing, and then they'll respond back with tracking, and then they'll give us an invoice too. So it's a lot of IT work to coordinate all that, to sync all that up, to know what the supplier has on on inventory and stock, what our pricing is, all that kind of stuff. So seeing all that, I guess, database management from that other company really let us, know how to set this company up.
Do you think that the drop shipping element has helped you become successful, like longer term, rather than having to purchase a bunch of inventory and have a bunch of overhead like you would in a brick and mortar store? But even just being e-commerce, having to purchase a ton of inventory and store it somewhere. Can you speak to how that e-commerce with the drop shipping has been beneficial?
Yeah, it's kind of a double-edged sword because on one hand you can really scale it pretty well, right? I mean, we have a few 100,000 SKUs on our website. There's no way we could possibly stock even a 1% of those. So it's been great to get that exposure to be able to list stuff that no other retailer that has a brick and mortar store really is listing. But at the same time, you're dealing with manufacturers that are drop shipping for you. And then, they ask themselves, well, why don't I just do this myself, kind of a thing. So you have to be adding value from a retailer perspective on that side. And it always makes it a little bit more disposable, right? If you're not stocking, it's much easier for them to say, oh, you're just placing these orders every day versus, oh, you just sent me a $10,000 order kind of thing for stuff you're stocking in your store. For them, I think sometimes it's easier to just look at the brick and mortar stocking dealers to work with. So it helps sometimes, and it definitely is more of a challenge sometimes too. So we kind of have a little bit of a hybrid. We do have a lot of our own stock as well. Returns that come back, we always bring those back here and then resell them. If there's ever a good deal on something that we think will sell well, or we know will sell well based on some prior history, we'll bring that stuff in and stock it too. So we're doing a little bit of both.
And you'd mentioned adding value as far as like your role with your suppliers. How do you handle that? How do you add value to them?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of different aspects to that. I think from a partner perspective, having a seamless system, right? So we've really spent a lot of IT time to develop a system that's pretty seamless. Like we can work with any supplier that does EDI, which is electronic data interchange. If they have an FTP site, we can tap into that and drop things to them or pull things from them. If they just work off of Excel spreadsheets, we have automated ways to deal with that. So as far as like a barrier to entry to work with us as a dealer, that's very low. So I think that helps. Whereas like some of these drop shippers, at least in this industry, are definitely a lot more high maintenance. They're calling orders in or they're emailing, but it's not always in the same format, and it's a lot of manual work on the other person's end to add everything. So the system itself is definitely a plus from an operational standpoint. And then as far as attracting customers, I mean, the different things that we do marketing wise, right? Social media, Google advertising, things like that definitely adds value. We're also well integrated in multiple marketplaces, right? eBay, Amazon, Reverb. We've even tried places like Wish, Newegg, these different obscure marketplaces that really no one's on. We've looked at integrating them too and work with those too.
So, Corey, how much of a technical background did you have before you started Capital Music Gear? Because I'm thinking like if I wanted to start an e-commerce business, hearing what you've said about, a lot of the technicalities involved in building systems and EDIs, all this stuff, could be a bit intimidating. Is it necessary to have a strong technical background, or did you learn a lot of that as you went?
Yeah, I learned it all. I mean, I didn't learn anything like that in college or anything like that. I mean, working with that e-commerce company in town definitely gave me a lot of insight and visibility on how they structured everything. But I
Hmm.
did, I did spend a lot of time on Coursera just, doing courses in C# programming and SQL database management, things like that, just learning how all that actually works and kind of building our own system based on some of the practices that I had learned before.
Got it. And that kind of leads me to my next question for you is whether it was when you were doing it part-time or when you went to doing it full-time, what were some of the initial biggest challenges and biggest hurdles you had as growing your business?
Yeah, I mean, I think the level of automation we have now is pretty great, but when I was first starting, I didn't know how necessary that would be or how possible some of that was, right? So there were a
Right.
lot of times where I was, manually putting together, I'd see the order come in to our system and then I would, kind of put it together in a spreadsheet format and send it off to the supplier. Um, and so when I was doing that part time, like at work, I was kind of doing that on my phone at the same time I was working, it was kind of a mess dealing with customer service emails, all that kind of stuff. So um, I think just the different levels of automation that we've kind of built over time, that's very different from when we first started. And it was definitely a challenge because like just dealing with, 20, 30 orders in the course of a day was a lot more work than dealing with a couple hundred orders in a day now. So
And when you first started, how did you get that first order? I mean, I know you were part time. Was it just you when you first started?
yeah, it was just me. We were just selling on Amazon to start. We didn't even have our own website yet.
Did you do like paid ads or anything like that to get, to that first page?
Yeah, Amazon has a specific format they want you to upload the different product information in, right? So you put together a spreadsheet. So I would get the product information from our supplier, kind of filter that into the Amazon template, and then upload it. And then since we were only working with like one main supplier and then like another that wasn't very big, it wasn't too hard to kind of manually manage all that, right? They would send me an inventory file once a day. I would put that in the Amazon format and then get it uploaded and things like that. So it was kind of a lot of that hand holding at first. And then over time, we started building systems that could, automatically take what the supplier was giving us and uploading that to Amazon. And then, then we went with eBay and we created our own website. And then you're kind of syncing that inventory across all platforms, right? If we sell something on Amazon, we have to deduct that from our own website and everything. So that's where we really started to build systems to integrate all that.
So one thing I just want to kind of clarify here to make sure I'm understanding the journey to this point. You you had an idea, you saw an opportunity in the music industry market specifically. So then you reached out to suppliers to see which suppliers you could order products from. You got those products and then started selling them on Amazon. Was that right? Is that how this whole started?
Yep, in a nutshell. Yep.
Okay. And then at what point did you realize I need to open my own store? Was it just because your orders were selling like crazy on Amazon, or what caused you from just wanting to only do Amazon and eBay into opening Capital Music Gear?
Yeah, great question. One, obviously the margins are better, right? Amazon charges like 15% commission fees. So we weren't making a lot of
Oh,
money on Amazon
wow.
versus 3% payment processing fee, right? So that's a big part, but also just to have validity and give our business an identity, right? We didn't want to be known as an Amazon seller. We wanted to be known as Capital Music Gear. So we needed a place for people to go and see us. And obviously that opens up more supplier relationships too, right? If we're only selling on Amazon, there's going to be fewer suppliers that are interested in working with us than if we have, our own website with our own marketing campaigns and our own brand that we're adding value back to them. So once we really kind of started going on Amazon and I knew I wanted to take it full time, that was the first biggest thing was developing our own website.
And so you kind of just mentioned marketing there. Once you had your own site and built that company identity, how did you go about marketing and driving traffic to your website? I mean, I imagine you still had your Amazon and eBay sales, but how did you build up that presence that was your own identity?
Yeah, I mean, we definitely wanted to create a social media presence. That's a voice of our company. I don't think that's ever been a huge sales driver for us, but it's definitely been something that people can look to and understand who we are as a company more. I think mainly the biggest driver into our website, well, two things. One, we spent a lot of time trying to figure out Google advertising, right? So shopping ads, keyword ads, YouTube ads, things like that. And so we're really looking to drive people that are ready to purchase an instrument to our site because we know with our efficient business model that we can offer, fast shipping. We can offer great margins. We have systems in place where if somebody's watching an item or they add it to their shopping cart, we'll send them an offer. Or we have a make an offer button right on our website where they can, make us an offer for a lower price, just like eBay does, just like Reverb does. Because in the music industry, everyone has to advertise these prices at the same price. It's a way of the suppliers leveling the playing field, basically. But if you go into a store, right? If I go into a Guitar Center and I talk to a sales rep and say, I really like this guitar, but can you give me 10% off or whatever? They'll always do it, right? They're not selling at those prices. It's just what you have to advertise at. So we do the same thing online, basically. And we're able to do that at a much more efficient and higher margin than some of our competitors.
Do suppliers ever contact you about offering discounts on their products that you've gotten from them, or is that not really an issue?
Yeah, so the suppliers we work with, um, most of them have MAP policies in place, and different ones have different things, right? So on our website, a good example, we'll give quantity discounts, right? We'll say, buy this at two or more and get it at this price per unit. Well, some suppliers say, "Oh, you're actually advertising this at a lower price because it's printed right there on the website at a lower price," kind of thing. So we've got a system in place to remove that from any given brand or product. And same thing with making offers, especially on third-party sites. Some of them are okay with it, some of them aren't. So we had to build systems in place to be able to filter that stuff out according to what suppliers needed. But if a supplier's like not okay with any kind of discount. Like that's one of our main things on our website. If you leave a review on our product, whether it's a positive or negative, we give you a 10% discount just for leaving the review. And if it has a photo or video, then you get 15% off. And so we never really do like Black Friday sales or anything because people are always doing 10, 15% off anyway. We just always have that. It's just, we ask for a little bit of feedback, positive or negative. And so we kind of look at that as another way of our marketing team, right? Like these customers are kind of our marketing team. They're talking to other customers about, what they liked and what they didn't like about something. And we're willing to essentially pay them for that, right?
That's I think that's
Yeah, that's really smart.
freaking genius. Did you actually, when you decided to give that 10 to 15% discount for reviews, did you actually take into consideration like, oh, if I hired people for marketing, it would cost me this much, and these are the people that are amount of people that are leaving reviews, so 10% of that deducted would be like, what made you come up with that? That's unique. I don't think I've heard of any other businesses doing that.
Yeah, I mean, for us, it was pretty easy because we were getting charged 15% on Amazon anyway, right? So it's like, the most we're going to lose on a 15% discount is maybe the 2 to 3% payment processing fee. But even then, there's usually enough margin to make up for that too. So for us, it was really easy to say, well, let's just, you purchase on our website, we'll transfer that discount to you, kind of thing. But yeah, I mean, once we started like looking at our marketing plan and trying to figure out, how we want to do this, do we want to hire people to do this? It was a no-brainer. Let's just let customers talk for us, kind of a thing. Because everybody's doing, we didn't want to do what everyone was doing. Obviously, you're not going to succeed that way. So everyone has a marketing team. Everyone's paying for these big marketing campaigns, advertising campaigns, and everything. And we do some of that on Google, but most of that is, on a per click per purchase basis, right? So it's still a margin game at that point. You're only paying for activities rather than like blind advertisements that you have no idea if you're getting any kind of return on or not.
So, being that Google seems to be a pretty big player in your marketing, how do you work to refine your keywords to get you the most benefit on those clicks that you're getting?
Yeah, so I think more of the fine tuning we've done on Google has been around like different product types or different margins. So in there you can say like this group we want, to have a max bid of this, or this group maybe we'll let Google do their all automated algorithms to optimize it. We also track the purchase price when a customer checks out. So and that gets communicated back to Google. So if we say to Google, we want to target return on ad spend of 10% of the amount that we're spending, um, or a 10% profit margin, right? So it's actually like 100% of what you're spending on Google. We're communicating from our checkout to Google saying, okay, this came from this ad, this resulted in this sale. And then Google learns, which things are successful. And they actually are surprisingly good at hitting those target return on ad spends, which is kind
Oh,
of
well.
crazy because you pay when people click, not when people check out, but you're communicating the checkout and Google's able to predict, who's ready to buy and things. That's kind of crazy.
Wow.
So short answer, we haven't really done a lot of that kind of minutia work. We've kind of done more of the, I guess, the higher scope work and just kind of trusted some of Google's algorithms, which, can be good or bad, but it seemed to be working for us so far.
That's great. And so, do you have a team now? I know you said you started, it was just you, but I'm hearing you say we a lot. So, when did that happen that you kind of started growing your team?
Yeah, so I have how many people? So I only technically have one employee, and he does IT work for us. But there's this staffing agency that reached out to us on LinkedIn, which I mean, staffing agencies all the time are reaching out, right? And so it's like most of the time you just kind of ignore that kind of a thing. But for whatever reason, this one, the mission seemed more believable. It seemed more authentic. So I responded and we reached out. And so this agency was pretty cool. They let you actually interview people. You work directly with the people that are going to be doing the work for you. Um, so I went through quite a few different interviews with people because I was looking for someone to help with customer service. They needed to have some background in music because people are asking about music equipment. So I went through quite a few people, even if they had the experience, make sure that the personality fit was going to be right, that they'd be good for customer service kind of a thing. And then I came across a couple good candidates that I wanted to bring on. So I was like, well, we can't just have them do customer service because there's not enough work for two people basically. So I gave one of them, social media, and I gave one of them, I call it catalog management, where they're managing the data on our website, right? So making sure things have images, things like that. Anyway, so I brought both of them on. They've been great. I think they've both been working with us for a few years now. I mean, it's been fantastic. And then I brought on another guy to do some admin work and also help out with customer service. And now we have a couple other people doing IT stuff. So yeah, it's a pretty big team. No one has even left the company this whole time. So
Oh,
it's
wow.
been great. Everyone's been having a great time.
That's awesome to hear. That employee retention. I mean, hey, that's a good metric, right? So when it comes to Capital Music Gear, what are some of the other key differentiators between yourself and competitors in the market? Do you have a lot of competitors? How, are you strategizing to, you know, gain more market share? Can you tell us a little bit about your strategy and how that works for you?
Yeah, so I think some of the differentiating things, we've talked a little bit about the operational side, and we actually have this right on our website on the About Us. There's kind of the internal stakeholders and external stakeholders, right? So the internal people that we work with, our suppliers, um, the operational system is pretty seamless. Um, for customers and potential people interested in our site, the discount thing is pretty huge. But then we also do something where we do 1% of every sale on our website gets donated to a charity that has a music related mission. So we have
Okay.
a list of different organizations that we've partnered with. And so when someone goes to check out, they can choose to either donate to one of those organizations, or they can recommend a different one if we haven't, listed that one. Or they can just say, I don't care, choose for me kind of a thing. And then we split that up, every month based on that pie kind of a thing. So that's been like a really cool networking thing between these organizations that are really, growing our industry. They're really supporting our industry in a meaningful way. We're important to them, not only by the donations, but also just as a partner that's helping, advertise their organization, bring awareness to them. And then for customers that are interested in that kind of thing, I mean, that's a big deal. They want to learn about organizations that are doing good work in our industry. They want to see those organizations supported. So it kind of helps support that too. So it's kind of a win-win-win for everybody.
Nice. Yeah, that's an interesting model, like you said, because it kind of bridges this community between people. And sometimes I think the music industry can feel a little like pockety sometimes. So
Yeah,
really acting as a bridge, that's really nice. Um,
that one I kind of stole from Amazon. There was this thing called Amazon Smile for a long time where you could do a 0.5% of their sale would get donated, but it wasn't, focused on any specific industry, obviously. So we just
yeah.
doubled that, said in our industry because it would be a great networking thing. So
So can you talk a little bit more about, I know you had said initially for you, you're pretty fortunate that you were in a good like financial spot. Um, Can you talk to maybe somebody who wants to do something with music, but doesn't have that same financial benefit? Like, what could they expect if they wanted to get into something like this as like a financial barrier to entry that they might have to try and rise up and meet?
yeah, I think the dropship model's pretty good for that, right? There's not a lot of risk, there's not a lot of overhead. Um, I think the music industry, especially I learned is a lot harder than a lot of other industries to do this model. And because it's a much smaller industry, there's fewer suppliers that are willing to entertain this dropship model, especially if you don't have this kind of seamless technology process like we do. Um, I'll just say the previous company I worked with was in the auto parts industry, and that industry was like everybody was drop shipping, every supplier, that was the standard. They had the files, they knew exactly what you would need. So if I didn't care about music, if that wasn't a passion, I probably would have done something in that industry instead. But so I think finding an industry though that it'll work well in, right? And you kind of test that by doing what I did, reach out to suppliers initially, get the appetite for who's willing to work with it, and then also figure out who else is selling online and doing the same dropship model and how you're going to differentiate from that. But from a financial investment standpoint, doing the dropship model, especially if you're going to kind of start it part time, um, that shouldn't be too big of a concern.
So with your drop shipping, are you only out when a customer purchases a product, or are you like purchasing, a certain quantity ahead of time and it's just being held at a different location? Then when it gets ordered, it gets shipped out. Or, somebody puts in an order, then you have systems in place to then purchase from the supplier. How does that actually work as far as I buy something from Capital Music Gear, it gets sent to me? What happens in between those two endpoints?
Yeah, so we're not typically purchasing anything ahead of time. Again, unless we're stocking something here. So our suppliers give inventory files, inventory information, right? And some of them will give that to us hourly. Some of them will give it to us monthly. So
Okay.
it's kind of all across the board. Obviously, the more we can get, the better because we're staying up to date, more current. But if we know that they have something in stock, then we're going to list it on our website. If they take longer to ship, like if it's a supplier that they're like, we really can't ship this in more than a couple days, we'll list it with that delay on our website. And then so you place the order, that order gets put into our system. Our system then sends that order to the supplier saying, ship this item, this many of it, right? Whatever the quantity is. Here's our order number. Here's the address to ship it to. And then once they ship it, they give us the tracking number to say, okay, this shipped on this tracking number. That gets put into our system. We send that to the customer to say, hey, your order shipped on this tracking number. And then the supplier also invoices us. Typically, they'll charge our credit card right then, or some of them will do like a monthly statement kind of a thing. But they'll send us an invoice detailing out all the charges, right? not only the wholesale cost of the item, but if there's a drop ship fee, any kind of fees that might be along with it. If they shipped on their account, they'll charge us for shipping, and that'll be on there too. And actually, some of them have to charge sales tax if you don't have a resale certificate on there too. So some of that will get itemized out. So all that gets kind of put together in our database to get all reconciled out at the end.
Okay, so a couple questions for you. One, you just mentioned a resale certificate. What are any type of, if I or someone listening is going to start an e-commerce business, whether it's music or whatever, retail, anything, auto parts, tools, what are some certificates? Are there any that I have to have in place in order to work with suppliers, or to work, to do drop shipping? Are there any type of qualifications I have to meet to set this type of business up other than the actual like tax number and stuff for the business itself?
Yep. So you'll have the tax number with the IRS, and then you'll have to do your state registration. But then, so there was this sales tax ruling. I think it's Wayfair versus South Dakota. That was, what was that, in 2016? They overturned that. Basically, before that ruling, they said, if you're only in Wisconsin, right, you only have to charge sales tax for orders shipping to Wisconsin, and if it ships to another state, then they're supposed to claim it on their personal taxes under use tax. But no one was actually really doing that. So they overturned that, saying, okay, retailers, now you have to charge sales tax whenever you ship into the state. But they have these different thresholds. Some states are based on, how many transactions you ship into the state. Some states are how much dollar volume you're shipping in. Some states include marketplace sales, some don't, right? So if I'm selling on Amazon and Amazon is remitting that sales tax to the state directly, that's never hitting my books. I'm never actually paying that to the state. But some states aren't set up with that. So it's kind of a lot of different things. So you will need to start, registering with states for resale certificates in each state that you're doing that amount of volume with.
How difficult of a process is that? Do you just get onto like a .gov website and do this, or how does that work?
Yeah, it's kind of a nightmare trying to figure it out on your own, to be honest. I tried to at first because there's literally over 10,000 different tax rates. Like, I would
Jeez.
love it. I would love it if each state just said, okay, here's our out of state sales tax rate. You pay this, for the whole state, and we'll divvy it up because we know Milwaukee gets more than Madison, right? Or whatever it is. Like, that would be great, but that's not how it's set up. So some states are, split it up by county, some states split it up by zip code. So there's all these different, because each one has a different sales tax rate. So we use TaxJar. And the nice thing about TaxJar is on our website, it has an API. When they go to checkout, they'll put in their address. TaxJar will say, okay, here's the tax rate, and it'll just charge it right then and there. And then for the reports that we file, it'll put all that information together in a report and say, okay, for this state, it's broken out by these different things. And so when we go to file, we just follow, the TaxJar report. There's a little bit more integration that you have to do with TaxJar to get all that information in there. So that's why at first, like, we tried to do all that just in our own system. But figuring all that out and then trying to stay up to date, because states change that stuff too. It just is impossible to try to do on your own. So
Got it. Understood. So as difficult as it might be, shipping from state to state, I'm curious as to what it's like doing business internationally. So the first part of the question I want to ask is, where are your suppliers located? Are they within the United States? Are they located throughout the world? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
most suppliers are in the US. We do have a couple across the pond, I guess. And one of them will actually drop ship for us out of there. If
Oh,
they don't,
wow.
yeah. But for the most part, yeah, it's in the States. There's a couple that we have that, but they'll do the duties, prepaid taxes thing. So we don't have to worry about any of the import charges or anything like that. Um, the only thing is like the foreign transaction rate on your credit card. Sometimes that's a little bit different, or there might be a conversion difference that you're not aware of.
But now you do sell internationally, correct?
We do. It's pretty limited right now, just because so when you're on our website, we don't have a live shipping calculator, right? We could build that to say, okay, to this zip code, to this address, here's what it's going to cost to ship. But we don't for a couple reasons. One, because we also sell on these other marketplaces and they don't have the capability for us to do that on their website, right? So we have to say on Reverb, for example, we have to say, okay, shipping to this country is going to be this amount for this shipping profile, right? So we try to have kind of a flat rate for any given country for any given profile in our system. And our profile is going to be like anything under a pound is one profile, right? So I know if anything under a pound, I can ship that first class international, and then I'll pick a few different zip codes in that country and do some spot checks, and then I'll try to predict what it would cost from there, kind of a thing. And then we haven't really expanded much beyond like the 1 pound limit, just because if it's shipping to Ontario, Canada versus like way up north where there's no driver, like a 5 pound item, that difference in shipping could be pretty substantial. So we haven't really developed a system. And then if we're wrong, right? If we think something weighs 2 pounds and then that gets drop shipped and the drop shipper, they don't know what is in our system, right? So it's a 4 pound item. So now all of a sudden, that difference is pretty substantial. And we're taking a big loss. So we haven't really expanded beyond that too much yet, but that's how we handle those right now.
Okay. All right. Yeah, that makes sense. It's kind of a good segue into actually supply chain in general. Having an e-commerce business, I take it that managing supply chains and logistics is a huge, part of what can really hurt you or help you depending on how well you do that. What are some of the challenges that you face when it comes to shipping and supply chain? How have you navigated those challenges? And, what have you learned, I guess, that you could share with the audience that as they look to grow an e-commerce business, they might want to take into consideration?
Yeah, I mean, supply chains for us haven't been like last year, or actually just coming out of COVID. It was, supply chains were all over the place. Things were way overstocked for a while, so everyone was discounting stuff, and everyone had ample supply. And then all of a sudden, everyone was short on everything, and they were just kind of, it was like a slinky. It was like it was all over the place. But for us, it didn't really change anything because our system, again, is tapped into their system. So if it's in stock, it's on our website. If it's out of stock, it's not on the website. So we didn't really have to manually manage anything for any of that. So it wasn't like we have these list of top selling products that we always buy and now we can't buy it and we can't do business because we don't have those top products. There's so many SKUs in our system and it's all based on what's in stock at our suppliers that that fluctuation we didn't even notice. It just happened. As far as the shipping goes, though, that has been quite a process. We've had some good FedEx reps in the past that have helped us improve our discounts and things like that. And so like at first we were using suppliers and they had great account discounts and things like that, right? So we were shipping on their accounts and those invoices would be shown that way. But as our discounts were getting better, we started shipping more on our account. And then that helps our volume and we were getting even better discounts because of that. So it kind of snowballed. And then because we offer free shipping and we work in that shipping costs into our pricing, the better shipping costs we were getting, the lower the price we were able to offer to our customers. And then that was able to increase sales. So it was kind of like a nice snowball effect once we really started getting some traction on our own accounts. So that's probably something like if I had to look back, I probably would have pushed for using our FedEx accounts a little bit sooner with some of these suppliers. We were taking the short-minded approach of, this is cheaper to ship with our supplier than on our FedEx account. But once that really started rolling, then that helped sales. It helped our overall shipping costs, everything. So.
Got it. Okay, that's good information. Thank you.
So one question I have for you is, first, how long have you been doing this from part-time till now? How long has it been?
I think the very first order in our system was like late October 2017. And then we really set up that main supplier I was talking about in 2018. And that's when I was doing it part-time. And then April of 2019 is when I took it full-time, registered the LLC, all that. So it's been almost I guess 5 years now.
Okay. So in let's say the 5 or so years that you've been, full time, you have your LLC and everything, how have you approached business development and looking towards the future of your business?
Yeah, that's a good question. There's a lot. Um, as the business keeps getting busier, a lot of the things that I tried to manage on my own, it's getting impossible to do so at this point, right? So whether it's admin tasks like bookkeeping, the sales tax stuff, whether it's like shipping and returns and things like that, um, a lot of that stuff. So I'm trying to delegate a lot of that more. And so part of the vision for this year is to actually get in our own physical building. Like all of our stock is just in our basement right now, just filled up like crazy. But just to have our own space where we're operating efficiently, I can hire somebody to come in and do that. We can actually go on a vacation, which we haven't done for years. Um, but so that's kind of the operational side, and so just trying to streamline some of those things with some more help is kind of the one of the biggest goals we have for this year. um, we took a lot of the low hanging fruit first few years of found the suppliers that were able to drop ship efficiently, get those set up, and so the sales growth was really aggressive the first few years. And it's still important now, but now it's kind of like tightening the operations so that things can just be more seamless and we can grow without having to put band-aids on a bunch of other stuff.
Got it. So kind of shifting from that growth to maybe more just like streamline efficiency and giving yourself a little bit of a break for personal time. So can you speak to that a little bit of how throughout this, entrepreneurial journey, how have you managed your, call it work-life balance or just time management with all the different tasks that are associated with your business?
Yeah, I mean, I think when we brought in those outsourced workers to help with some of the customer service stuff, that was a big thing, right? So that was, I was balancing that constantly, and so some of the help that we brought in over time has helped with some of that balance. But it is tough. I mean, it's like, you're always kind of monitoring it as an entrepreneur. It's your business. You don't want anything to fall through the cracks. So um, yeah, I feel like I'm never really off, which is probably I'm probably not the right person to ask about how to do that properly.
No, it's funny because so many of the entrepreneurs we talk to have a similar uh, answer, right? I guess it really, there's, while you're in the hyper growth mode, it's hard to have that work life balance, which I think goes back to your point that you said earlier. You're passionate about music. And it seems like one of the reoccurring themes that we have on Step into Success podcast is passion. And let me just ask you a little personal passion question. Do you play a lot of music yourself? I mean, is that what got you into wanting to open this business? Are you a big music fan? I mean, obviously I think you have to be a bit, but do you play? Have you ever been in a band, anything like that?
Yeah, you can probably see some of the guitars and stuff. I mean, I haven't really been in a band since college. Probably we gigged a lot back in college, but yeah, I just play with the church, twice a month now, kind of a thing. But I mean, back in high school and stuff too, I played trumpet, violin, piano. So music's always been a big passion, and yeah, I mean, it just makes it so much easier. Like when things suck and you're really kind of in the trenches with stuff, to be dealing with stuff that you love overall. At the same time, it's kind of hard to like I don't come down to my office here to play guitar at the end of the night most nights because I don't really want to be sitting in front of the same computer I've been in front of all day and dealing with the same kind of stuff that I've been dealing with all day. So there is some of that too, trying to find a good balance between still keeping it your passion and not you know something that you're being overloaded with.
Whether it's something mindset related or something strategic related or something educational related, what would be your advice to anyone out there that's looking to start an e-commerce business of their own?
Yeah, I think I mentioned Coursera earlier, but to be honest, that was such. There's just so much free education out there. It's ridiculous. Like you don't have to go. I mean, if you want to go get another degree or whatever, like I don't want to talk anyone out of that, but at the same time, like, is it worth it, right? There's so much free education. As long as you're self-driven, you can really learn all of that stuff on your own. You can test yourself. You can, surround yourself with other people that know that stuff too. So I don't know. I think it's just important to jump in and learn what you can. And then it just kind of snowballs. You start learning things you didn't even think about. Um, and then it just keeps going from there.
Can I ask you, when it comes to like, you're in it, maybe you're getting worn down because of all the different things you have to do, and it is tough to manage, the work-life balance or lack thereof. What keeps you motivated to, and maybe even beyond motivated, how do you stay disciplined to keep doing the work when maybe you're exhausted or just have kind of had enough and need a break? How do you handle that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just responsibility to other people, right? So, I mean, first and foremost to the family, like this is our main gig, we don't have any other jobs outside of this. So if we don't do a good job with it, we're not going to be able to sustain our livelihood. But also just the responsibility to all the people that work with the company, right? Like if we start, having some rough times or rough patches, like I try to issue, bonuses to everybody when things are going well. So to not be able to do that is obviously pretty heartbreaking. So I think just having that constant responsibility to everyone is a pretty basic driver.
Yeah, that's a great answer. And we'll get you out of here on this, Corey. We like to ask everyone, and always curious what the answer is going to be. Tell us, in your opinion, what is success?
Oh, that's a good question. Um, I think success is just being passionate about something and putting your all into it, right? Whether you're an athlete that's hitting the gym every day and learning stuff and improving that way, or whether it's running your own business and like digging into things and growing as a professional, or if you're working somewhere and really diving in and excelling it, you might not even be getting promoted, but intrinsically, are you learning, are you growing, kind of a thing. I think the definition of not being successful is being miserable in whatever you're doing every day, not growing, not really being engaged in whatever you're doing. So I think as long as you have that, I think that's a good definition. And then just being surrounded by people that you love and love you and all that. That's a big part too.
Great.
Yeah.
Well, Corey, again, we know you got a lot going on, so we appreciate the time today. We will put a link to the website in this video, so people can hopefully get on there and buy some Capitol Music gear. And we, just want to really thank you for the time, and we appreciate it.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. It was fun.
Thanks for listening. If you found today's episode to be insightful, please make sure you give us a like if you're listening on YouTube, or rate us if you're listening on Spotify, Apple, or any of the other podcast platforms.
And to help us keep sharing these successful stories, please subscribe to the channel.